Hi everyone, welcome to today's episode. It's episode number 10 with Ian Wells, who is a director of Polyvine, which is a family-run business based in Cheddar that sells varnish and other similar products. Today we talk to Ian all about running a business, the challenges of working with family and other things. I hope you enjoy it. If you do, don't forget to like, subscribe and share with your friends. Thanks very much.
Do you play football?
No.
Do you play any sport?
Not now. I used to.
What did you used to play?
But not around here. So I was boarder at Shatwick School when I lived.
How long ago?
Oh, I left in 92. So I was rugby and I ran for the Southwest in like mid-distance running and that sort of stuff. So kind of 800 meters plus, took a couple of mile cross countries and that sort of stuff.
So how old are you?
I am 48.
They're strong.
Yes, I got to think about it because I don't really think about age. So I'm like, I still think I'm 16. I was telling Mike when we were away. Well, not quite 16, maybe 18. But yeah.
So are you two friends?
So I'm friends with Ian's son, who's getting married.
And who's that?
He's the guy that I went to Benidorm with for his stag do, and Ian came as well.
Well,
Right.
Yeah.
Benidorm buddies.
Benidorm
Right,
buddies.
okay.
But we've got really similar.
Personalities?
Yeah, I think so.
I think we go.
You said yeah.
No, I mean we go on well. It's quite hard to class what you would call a friend.
Yeah.
So we're acquaintances, and we went away for like 4 days together. And if we're in a room and there's loads of people, we just sit next to each other and talk to each other.
We ignore everybody else.
And then we just ignore everybody else. And then if there's a meal that Hennessy, my son's wife to be, if she arranges anything, me and Mike are sat together. It's just we don't actually arrange anything apart from that.
No, we don't, which is a bit weird.
No.
Well, that'll come in time.
Yeah.
It'll come in time, I'll say.
He misses me, really. That's the reason.
Or do you secretly miss him?
Every day.
So you obviously work for Dad's company.
I run the company.
You run the company.
I run the company. So my dad started it in 86.
Yeah.
I became MD when I was 40, which was probably a bit young. But now I completely run it. And he just works, not just works, he works in the lab with my son, Joe, doing all the research and development and everything. And then I run everything else and oversee everything. So,
So how old's Joe?
Joe is 25 or 26.
Oh, okay.
Why are you looking at me? He's your
I
son.
thought you might know. Yeah, about that.
So is Joe marrying Hennessy?
Joe is marrying
I've
Hennessy.
met Joe. He's
Have you
quite
met
tall.
Joe?
He's quite tall.
He's tall.
And mind you, everybody's tall compared to me.
He's tall, blonde hair.
Yeah. I've met.
Can be
You've definitely
quiet.
met Hennessy.
I saw Hennessy in one of the supermarkets. I think she might have been in Sainsbury's or
recently,
and he was with her, and I was taking a mickey out of her because about getting married and that they'd met quite quickly and they were getting married and it was lovely and blah 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 blah. And I follow Hennessy online.
Right.
On Instagram.
And it's is it 3 weeks today till they get married?
Oh, my word.
It's not long.
3 weeks till
It's
3 weeks tomorrow, I think.
15th, whatever that is.
Yeah, it's about 3 weeks till tomorrow.
Sorry, I'm just going to ask some questions if you don't mind.
You carry on.
First thing, do you know how we know each other?
Yes.
Okay, so and then what I was going to say is being part of a family business. And the reason I'm asking this question because I've got my own company as well, and we are a family company. It's not something that not as big as you guys, but we're a small family company. Do you find that having a family company almost limits your relationships in the outside world?
What, with other people?
Yeah.
Massively. So if you said to me, do I have a friend?
Yeah.
No.
Well, you have Mike.
I have Mike. So
you can have
so I think, but because you have such a nucleus of working relationship, and it either works or fails. I have my own beliefs on why most family companies don't do very well and why most families fall out with each other.
Yeah.
But I think if you do it in a certain way, it can work very well if you run it as a proper business and people have their jobs, they're responsible for those things. They get that job because they warranted and are capable of doing it, rather than saying, here's my child, I'm going to give him this job. You then link with all of those people, and that's it. And then you see your colleagues, but they're your colleagues, so you see them out of work, but not really, sort of thing. So it does become very insular. So it's almost probably like the I don't know if you can relate to a farming community or something. Or it's very I can see how people get boxed in and remote and that sort of thing. And I think if you don't do it carefully and work well with them and make relationships with their partners and do stuff with them, you can become very lonely. So that's why I would say I was very young when I had children. So I was 20. I got married at 21. I was 22 when Joe was born. So that means he's 26. So so I know people fling it around a lot. I know a lot of people say, "Oh, my children are my friend," and I know every parent thinks that. But I don't know how much that they actually mean that or whatever. So I know every parent probably thinks that's the case. Like me, I think that's the case. But when I do look at other families, I can see a different relationship that I have that other people have. Good or bad, you know.
I'm going to be the other person that doesn't think that your kids are friends, because I absolutely do not agree with that statement. Partly because
maybe the wording's wrong.
It's fine. It's not right or wrong. You know, you're entitled to your opinion. But I think partly because I think kids need a parent, even when they're little or big. And my eldest is 42. And I still think he needs a mum, not a friend. So I literally I still parent him at 42. And he'd be the first person to say that. And I just think that's really important, to parent your children all the way through. When does it become friend parent?
I still. Do you understand
what I mean?
I think it depends on the definition of being their friend. Maybe that's a bad definition. So I still parent them. I still give them advice whether they want it or not. One thing, one thing I am very careful in, which I do think is different, is I say to them, "You're an adult. You've moved out. You do what you like." So when it comes to buying a house, getting married, whatever it is, I'll say, "I'm here to help. If you want my help, ask for it." I will never tell them what to do.
Exactly.
So if they're arranging something, let's say let's pick something else that isn't relevant. So let's say they're arranging a party or a celebration or something. I won't say, oh, it should be here and these people should come and we should eat this. It's like, oh, if you're doing that, if you want some help, ask me. And that's the end of it.
But isn't that parenting?
I think it is. That's my parenting. And then almost every single time they'll come to me and go, "Oh, what do you think of this? What about that?" And I'll say, "Oh, I think this," or I think you could do that. And then I usually end it with, "Well, it's up to you." And then usually they'll come back and go, "Oh, I decided on that," which is probably somewhere.
That's really lovely though, because it gives them the independence, but also that support when and if they need it, which is great.
But I suppose the other side of it is talking about business and children, because obviously my daughter's involved with our business. In fact, at some point, all of the children have done something in the business and will do if I needed them in an emergency. But that bit where putting people into positions and various other bits and pieces, but also when you're the boss, like you are, there's a social cutoff, isn't there? So at what point do you find this? That lonely position can be, because you are the person at the top, you are the person that's accountable for running the company. Does that prevent you from, this having friendships within your team? I suppose that's what I'm trying to say.
As in with colleagues? Yes. So I get on well. I'll go through the whole business and in the manufacturing side and factory, and I'll speak to everybody. There's no. We've all got our quotes and this sort of stuff. I'm a big believer on nobody is better than anybody else, no matter what position in life they're in or whatever. No one for any reason could be better than somebody else. And So I'll speak to everybody, and then but if I'm out, say I travel a bit with my European and UK sales manager. So I was up in Scotland with him interviewing and stuff. We'll go out, have a meal and a couple of beers and stuff. So we'll chat to a certain level, but you can only go so far with that. Yeah. So some people I'm a bit more personable, and they'll be a bit more personal with me, and they'll tell me things they wouldn't want the rest of the business knowing. But there's still a point where they're still an employee and they work for you. So they can't be a friend or a true, confident, person to have those conversations with because they work for you. Yeah.
And it's interesting because where do people like you and I go to for support?
Your partner.
Could you see how you hesitate there?
No, I mean, yes, I mean, I was trying to think of someone else but my wife.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I met my wife when I was 16. So we got married at 21. So she's 4 years older than me. So, of course, I speak to her. But some stuff with work, it isn't as relatable as other stuff.
Yeah.
And I was trying to think of somebody else that I would speak to. I do speak to John. I do speak to Joe and Beth, children, a lot. About all sorts of stuff, and they speak to me about
all sorts of stuff.
But again, I don't think necessarily all children would talk to their parents. Some stuff I'm like, do you want to talk about this? And they're like, yeah. So I think it's. I think you can have a connection. People, when I lived in Bristol, I did have a network of friends there, and some of those had certain jobs and they wanted to offload, and we kind of got together. But then we've kind of grown apart from them. Their lives don't really match with ours very well at the moment. We're more in the country, chilled out, have a cup of tea or whatever, and they're like, "Let's party." So
that's why you two suit each other.
So yeah. So we sat on the plane together, and we got a cup of tea each, didn't we?
We did. We had a cup of tea. Yeah, it was great.
But it's funny because I mean, it's something that you and I have talked about as well. We spent time together. It can be very lonely, like you said at the beginning. It can be very lonely when you're running your own. You're running a company, whether it's your own company or somebody else's company. That loneliness, and if you don't have, I mean, obviously, I support Mike in that sense because he doesn't have anybody to go to in that sense.
It is really difficult when you're running a business, and especially when that business is going through change or has a challenge or whatever it is. I've been there numerous times where you have got a difficult decision to make, or you are in a position where you're going to have to change how the business operates or runs or something. And you think, well, who do you talk to? And a lot of the time you sort of want to get opinions from people within your team, but actually it's very hard to have those opinions because their opinion is going to be very different to yours because you run the business, and actually the business is your baby. It's really important the business succeeds and does well, whereas their focus, their view is as an employee, and actually they just want to make sure that their job's secure. So I've found that that's very difficult, and I'm fortunate that I've got some great people that I can go and talk to and talk things through with. But it can be really, really lonely, I think.
I think the only way I'd say that the difference that I've made in my business over the last few years, which is a very unusual thing to do. Most owned SME businesses, family businesses, will have one or two directors, and they're the shareholders. I don't have that now. I have obviously the shareholders, and I also have directors who are non-family members and non-shareholders. So this week, every month, main directors meeting, I have people in there that aren't family and are directors. And we have a strategic plan. We have set ways of how the business operates, and that's agreed at board level and cannot be changed unless the board decide to change how something works or runs.
So do you have board meetings and directors meetings?
So we have board meetings and shareholder meetings.
Okay.
So the direct holders meeting, board meeting, and then we'll have a shareholders meeting, and only it's quite well wrapped up. So only blood family can have the shares and will ever have shares in the business. Otherwise, it just gets watered down. So you just lose whole control of it. So we have a shareholders meeting, and obviously then the shareholders are appointed, and then the directors are responsible to the shareholders. So in that aspect, I do have that conversation every month because I have a level of people that are a director. So I mean, the MD of a company is only the same as the Prime Minister. So he's the leader amongst equals or something. It's called for the Prime Minister. So a managing director is basically the same. As a director, you're all the same. It's just you're leader amongst equals, sort of thing.
Of course.
So and it would have been much easier for me not to have that. Because before that, I just did what I liked.
So at what point...
didn't ask anyone.
So at what point did you decide to make that change, and why did you make that change?
Or create the structure?
Yeah.
I could see that is how, my view, that's how small businesses fail and don't grow.
Okay.
So I think everything that I do is right.
Of course.
And I was quite happy with being a dictator. Literally, that was the end of that. It's your business. You started it. You do what everyone does. What you say.
And let's be honest, most small businesses are dictatorships.
They are,
and that's how they succeed.
And they're yours. You're the dictator.
But you are right, I think, in that a business will get to a certain point where it can't be a dictatorship anymore.
No, because again, on several occasions, we'll have a meeting and it will go through stuff, and we'll all go in with our own view. Normally, everyone's view will be what you'll come up at the end is everyone's view will be different at the end than what they went in with, and it'll usually be a mix of everybody because somebody will say, "Well, this is I don't think we should go that far. How about this?" And you'll end up with a. It's not a committee because as soon as you have a committee, it fails. So people in my younger days of I used to live in a small village, and I had looked at a cricket club, and I used to help around the bar when I was a student and stuff, and it was volunteering, and they said, "Oh, do you want to come on the committee?" and that sort of thing. I lasted about 4 or 5 meetings, even when I was 19 or whatever, because everyone. Because everyone had such different views and from different walks of life and different jobs, you couldn't possibly have a constructive meeting and move anything forward because somebody thought the way to make money was to sell some jumpers at the to bring them by. And it's like, well, that's not going to build the extension sort of thing. At least with a board of directors, everyone has a certain aspect of business knowledge and nous, and that's how they've got there.
Sorry, I'm going to interrupt there but doesn't that come back to, even in a committee, because we obviously are both trustees for a charity.
Yeah.
So, and I'm the chair of that. I've always been the chair, not through choice. In fact, I've always been the chair because that's what the trustees have asked. And I suppose I created it. I've run it from the start, but I think if you're a good leader, it's not a dictatorship because there's a level of leadership. So if at a committee meeting, if you've got a good chairperson and they manage the meeting properly and they manage the information that's coming through, then therefore the organisation can go forward. If you've got a poor chairperson who doesn't shut people up, who are very opinionated, and doesn't allow the person that actually might have a really bloody good idea and bring that forward, and it's not selling jumpers at the car boot sale, that actually the club can be really successful. And I think you need a good leader. It's got to be one good leader in every committee and one good leader in every company to make that happen. And is that dictatorship? That's what I'm questioning.
I don't know. I think I've gone for. I think I'm a good leader. I think I'm the best person for the job.
Yeah.
I'm in it and everything else. So if I didn't think that, I wouldn't be doing the job. Is it dictatorship? No. I think I over the last probably 5 years, I've moved from dictatorship to actually talking to people, listening to their point of view.
Yeah.
And the beauty of a committee, trustees, or a board running a business, it's on votes. So, but I think the way you truly find if you've got the right mix of people is, I can't remember last time something had to go to a vote.
Yeah.
We have a discussion and then we go, all right, so we've come to this, and I can recap. Who agrees with that? Yeah, that's good.
Which is exactly
we
how
haven't,
we
physically haven't. I think if there's too much clashing, you'd have to go, right, who's voting? I want this, put your hands up. And I think you've sort of failed if you get to that point.
I concur.
Yeah.
I think you're probably right. I guess the question for if and when that might happen is, how do you stop people pleasing? Because you're the MD, you're the managing director, you're also a shareholder of the business. How do you stop those people that are voting from just voting with you because of your position?
Because, to be fair, that's how they've got the job. So they wouldn't, if they just said, and most people, immediate reaction would be, you'll put people in there that's going to agree with you. To a certain extent, you have to. So to a certain extent, the majority of directors are shareholders because I want to protect my interest.
Of course you do, but at the same time,
the other directors are only directors because they will say what they think. And if they just said yes, they wouldn't be a director. There's no point in having them.
And I think you're spot on in that. Yeah, you need people that are going to challenge you, because at the end of the day, that's what you want to do, is grow that business. And you're not going to grow that business by still running it as a dictatorship, but of a different kind, which is essentially what that is. Whereas having people that are going to challenge those decisions, come up with ideas, not be afraid to voice their opinion, is the way it's going to grow.
Yeah.
I was talking to in fact my team this morning.
It's a massive bottle of water, by the way.
Just
if you look, you'll like this. You'll see the kind of person that I'm seeing up. You've got all your times down here. And then
you've missed it.
I have.
You've not.
I've had lots of cups of tea this morning. Look at your little phrases. See, ready to go for it. Believe in yourself. It's all kind of, But not that I read it every 5 minutes.
It's 2:30, and you're still at about 10 a.m.
And
so you've got a lot to drink.
That'll be empty on my walk home. So I walk to work.
So you've missed believe in yourself.
Yeah.
Shoot for success. Don't give up. Oh no, we're nearly up to don't give up. Okay?
Well, we'll soon catch up.
Okay. This morning I was talking to the team. I did some training this morning at work, and I'm a bit further away from the team now, so I'm trying to do what your dad does, really, but I still can't let go. No, because we haven't sorted everything out yet. But there is so anyway, I went in there and I talked to the team. We're only a very small team, we're nothing, guys, really, really tiny team. But I tell them, this is the financial. If you don't deal with that bit's not going to happen. So if you've only got 21k in the bank, for example, you can't pay the wages on 21k because that ain't going to come. So who's not going to be paid this month? And things like that. And I think to a certain degree, it's that inclusiveness, it's accountability. It all comes down to the same thing, doesn't it? If you're not open and honest, then they can't be open and honest. If they turn around and say, well, the reason why we're not getting any money in, for example, is because of this, this, and this. If you're not listening to them say that, then actually you're cutting your nose off to spite your face as a leader.
You are. I mean, each area has to be responsible for itself. So I always think in an organisation, a very important section is budgeting, finance, and figures, which isn't my strong point. That's why I have a financial director, and she whizzes everything off. And I say, "Can you explain that, please?" And then I have a manager looking after sales who's really good at sales, and he has to work within a budget. He has to work within figures. He has to work within targets. And then the financial director will have a set of figures and targets and budgets, which there'll be a fortnightly meeting based on figures and costs and changing, and that's a completely different conversation of our friends and the bankers and that sort of thing. But yeah, so that all has to be reviewed continuously. So I think if you don't have people in different areas that are strong and good in those areas, and that's what I mean maybe about committee. So for me, I would never meet. So if something's brought up, so we have a management meeting, a directors meeting, and a board meeting. And I'm not a meeting person. I think they're on the side and you do your work, and they're on top of your work. They're not. Today I'm having meetings. You could go and work in a government, let's say, and that would be fine. But no, I think if you don't have everybody responsible for their area, and then within that meeting, finances aren't looking great, right? We'll pick up when the meeting's finished to sort that out and see where we're going with it, rather than having it by committee discussion. And that's, for me, that's where most meetings break down. So as soon as something comes up, which is one person's responsibility, as the leader of that group, you say, we'll pick that up separately after the meeting, rather than everyone else chucking their pennies worth in, because that's not their area of responsibility or expertise. So again, you're on committee on having a conversation that should be down to one person.
And we, as a charity, Mike and I keep an eye on the finances, and we watch what comes in, what goes out, and stuff like that. And I think sometimes by doing that, by just having Mike and I doing that, like exactly what you said, it makes the charity successful. We know what's coming in. We know what's not coming. As in, we're not getting the donations, we're not getting the grant applications, we're not getting this, we're not getting that. So actually that reduces what our capacity is to be able to help people. And if you don't do that, I mean, we do, and we then pass the responsibility on to other people to kind of fulfill. But if you don't have that, you're right. Businesses aren't successful, and then they go bust, and then people lose their jobs, and then we're in that whole cycle again.
Yeah.
So have you been involved with business pretty much from the start?
Yeah, so it was started in '86. So I used to stick my head in when I was home from, like I said, I was at boarding school for my last 3 years of school. But yeah, I would stick my head in, sort of thing. Said I never worked there. Same as my children said. Well, never worked there. Went to art college, mainly digital graphic design, that sort of thing. But it was quite broad. I did fine art, which was shocking, and I really struggled.
I didn't know that you were an artist.
But I wouldn't call myself an artist. But I would. I've always been very keen, and until 2 years ago, I looked after all the marketing myself. I now have a part-time marketing manager who reports to me, who looks after stuff, because it just got too much for me. But I am very keen on it, and in meetings, I think sometimes I'm quite a visual person, so I could have a conversation, and we could talk about something, and of a design, a graphic, a look, a concept, whatever it is, or with you, with building, whatever. And I can very clearly see it in my. I'm a visual, graphical person, and I'm also a literal, as in speech and that sort of thing. I'm not a keen writer, communicating in that way.
Okay, that's really interesting.
So, as in, very bad.
Yeah.
A lot more people you will find that have flares for art and managing something like what I do, and trying to pull things together, I found have difficulties in literacy and numeracy and that sort of stuff. And I'm surprised most people keep it quiet. I don't run around telling everybody, but I'm amazed about how many people I meet, and then I find out that more people than not are. And the people that are coming in to look after certain areas are very specific. So, your finance director is extremely good at maths.
Yeah,
so,
loves numbers.
Loves numbers, sort of things. So, it's I think my sort of role lends itself to dyslexia, dyspraxia, all this sort of stuff, because you have lots of other good things to offer, but you have those downsides. So yeah, it's surprising how many people run things that are
Yeah, I think you're absolutely spot on. I'm pretty terrible at maths, but I'm dealing with figures on a almost daily basis. And yeah, it's I'm very creative in terms of I visualize things much more. And sometimes when people are trying to explain things to me over the phone, I'm like, I'm just going to come and see it because it's so much easier to look at something or see a photo of something, and you're like, yep, you just need to, do this or do that. Yeah, so I totally get what you're saying.
See, I'm not.
No,
I'm a little bit of everything, which is a bit of a bummer, really, because I'm slightly dyslexic. Not a lot. But I have slightly. Yeah, I've written a book, had it published. I'm a bit arty-farty, but I'm not an artist in any way. I don't want to claim any of that, but I like things like that. I'm a dabbler. I think in a different world, I probably would have set up a big art studio in London and done things like that, and enjoyed dabbling in paints, but just making a mess with them, not actually being able to draw anything. Can't do that either. But we've had other people on our podcast. I'm thinking of Mandy, that's all. And also my husband, incredibly dyslexic. Mandy is one of the most caring but visual person, isn't she?
She's very visual, yeah.
Yeah, and Dave is an engineer. How the hell? He's really clever with maths, but he struggles to write words and various other bits and pieces, and it's really tough for him to write an email. So same as Mandy. Somebody was putting finances in the other day, and she put fiance. I've been talking to this person about this. I said, I hope bloody not. There shouldn't even be anywhere near a man at this moment in time to protect it. So we just laugh about it now, but it's quite tough when you feel very one-lined, particularly when you want to run a company, and unless you can afford to have a finance manager, a marketing director. If you're a small company, you want to start something off. It's really tough to think that you've got to do it all.
I do. I know for a fact that to do all of the finance and everything else, and letters to the banks and all this sort of stuff, I wouldn't have started a business. Yeah. So if it wasn't for my dad starting it, cat's chance in hell of me starting it. I mean, I was the 4th employee. So there's my mum and dad. My mother-in-law was the 1st employee, and then again, see, working with your family, I worked with her for. Well, I started there in '92, and then she left when we moved to Cheddar in 2014. So I worked with her for that long. So yeah.
Do you get on all right?
I got on with her really well. Yeah. So it was weird. Again, everyone says, "Oh, I get on with mother-in-law and this sort of thing." I got on with her extremely well. It's extremely well. So I can remember 2 or 3 disagreements, literally, as in, and then the following day. I mean, they were good disagreements. I mean, it wasn't a little disagreement. It was, and then the following day, nothing, completely forgotten. And then I think maybe that's like I see how it could work with family working in the business, because when I saw her outside of work was never mentioned. Nothing. It was like she didn't even work. And I was fairly young when I was her boss. I wasn't her boss to begin with. She was my boss. But it didn't take long for me to become her boss. And then I said, outside of work, it was like she didn't even work there. And that's maybe why I then didn't really have a problem with Joe and Beth coming into the business and that sort of thing. Which again, they said they didn't want to.
But did you persuade them, or did they decide to send you for a job?
Excuse me. It all happens. I think the misperception of people thinking, "Oh, you work for your parents, so you got a cushy number." I think in certain family businesses, yes, you have.
Yes.
I would say in most, including ours, you have to work harder to prove yourself. So you'll get rewarded less financially than anybody else, because you have the end goal of getting some shares, etc. You'll have to work harder to prove yourselves, and you'll be scrutinized by everybody else more. But from everybody else, they've got a cushy number. Your dad's the MD, sort of thing.
That's it. You can't put a foot wrong.
You can do what you like and this sort of stuff. I also think the key is that I'm not their boss, so they have other bosses. So
that must make quite a big difference, actually.
Massive. There has been small amounts of time where I had to be their boss because I didn't have anyone to put in between us, which I didn't like doing. But I'm more than happy not to be their boss. So so they both report to somebody else.
I agree. Completely agree with what you've just said, because I am my daughter's boss.
It's not nice, is it?
And it can be uncomfortable. We've kind of got over that now, and she's got over that now, because I think it was more she had a difficulty with it because I'm her mum as well. It's that kind of crossover. And the only reason that, for her to get into that position was because the team voted her in to do that. So we kind of use the team almost as a board, and they vote people into their positions and stuff. And I think me not being around since kind of COVID's been around, I think that's helped quite a bit, more so for her, because I'm at the end of the phone now. And it's not so bad as me saying it out loud in front of other people. Actually, you could have perhaps made a different decision about that, or perhaps you could do that in a different way, or making a suggestion that might embarrass her, or she might feel that she's failed, or she's let me down, or all of that stuff. Or she just absolutely hates me that day. For whatever reason, it can be anything, but it is difficult when you have to actually be their boss.
I think, I think it works quite well because, again, the same as on the private side. Joe runs the lab, but he's responsible for his area.
Yeah.
So he doesn't actually have to ask me anything.
Yeah, thank goodness.
Or actually interact with me. I mean, we have a weekly production meeting, which my production director and he is in, and we go through everything and problems and all this sort of stuff. But that's actually as a meeting, and then I have updates with him and my dad in work on research and development and chemicals and that sort of stuff. But he's updating me on his job.
Yeah.
And then in a meeting, I'm saying, well, what projects have you got coming up?
Yeah.
Sales are saying to me they need this, etc., and he's adding that to his list.
Yeah.
I'm not saying, oh, Joe, today you should be making
but that's
whatever.
Be helping massively in terms of his confidence, in terms of, actually whilst he does work for the family company, whilst you are his dad, his granddad's there as well. Actually, him having that responsibility is massive. And I think going back to what you were saying a few minutes ago about family businesses, where it is a bit of a cushy number, I think a lot of the time they are people that work in those types of family businesses. They're kept away from any of that. They are literally told, right, you need to do this now, you need to do that. They don't have a role that has any kind of responsibility.
That's probably again why they kind of slow down and not do so well, is because the older generation are running it, and they've actually don't know what their customer base wants because they've got too far removed from it.
Well, it's about innovation, isn't it? And that whole bringing young blood in to come up with new ideas and do things differently.
Yeah.
But doesn't this all then span back to trust? Because in a sense, you've trusted your dad and your mum who set up the business, and your mother-in-law. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you've trusted that. There's a trusted relationship there, and then you trust that your son will do his best in his job, and your daughter and partners or whatever. But you also trust in your team to do the same as well. So you trust in your financial director, you trust in your management team. All of that. When we fundamentally look at it, you have to learn to trust those people around you, whatever their position are within your company, and also like your family and friends and wife and husband. And if you haven't got trust, you don't have that capacity to trust people. Wow, that's going to be a tough world, isn't it?
If you can't, yeah, I mean, if you can't trust anybody to take areas on and do it themselves, it's quite a heavy burden, because then you've actually literally got to do everything yourself. For one, and if you don't give people a chance and trust people, I can't see how you succeed.
No.
If you take any one of these kind of inspirational kind of speakers and this sort of stuff, if you look at everything, the root of it all is none of them are necessarily good at anything, but they're good at putting a team together that are good at things, and they trust them to do their job.
Yeah.
If you take lots of people, Branson, all sorts of things. He doesn't. He can't read an account sheet. He said that quite publicly, And it's so most people, I think, the only reason certain people succeed, I think, and other people don't, is you bring people in around you and trust them to do their job. And if they don't do their job and they fail, then they go and you get somebody else.
Yeah.
But you have to trust them to do it, and then when they fail, replace them, which does happen.
Yeah. Well, I was talking to a chap this morning who, when first joined the company, said, I mean, he was terrified of me, absolutely terrified. And really and truly, I should have sacked him. I shouldn't have kept him on. But it's like I could see a potential in him. There was a spark that I knew that he had skills. I think his anxiety and his lack of self-belief prevented him from believing what he saw in him. And I saw him on a one-to-one with some mentoring. And he said this morning, he said, God, those 3 sessions with you, he said, I felt awful. And he said, because I knew I was waiting at any point for you to sack me, because I knew I just didn't get it. I just wasn't doing my job as well as I could. And I went, and look at me now. And he went, yes. But I'm just like overwhelmed by it all. And it's just so lovely to see that. But that comes back to your intuition, doesn't it? Somebody comes along, you interview them, you recognize their skills in a way sometimes that they're not necessarily on paper, but you can feel them. Does that make sense?
We don't take anybody on based on qualifications, the previous job. We're taking on salespeople in the eastern Scotland at the moment. So we've got a team of 5 people plus a manager that are all home-based, that go out 5 days a week, seeing our customers, merchandising, selling, everything else. We wouldn't employ another salesperson and train them for us. We'll take people from other industries. Yeah. Nobody would give them a job. Yeah. We'll take them from other industries and see. And again, this is a point of my sales manager. He said we should be taking people from other industries. And I said, well, let's give it a go then. And I go to interviews with him. It's always nice to have another opinion and everything else. And everyone in the industry used to think we're mad. We've had our first person that we took trained. Now they've left because someone poached them.
Wow!
But nobody would have given the people we're taking the job we're giving.
Yeah. No.
Because they're basing it on their preconceptions of people.
Yeah, I completely agree.
And I don't even think we look at people's. No, people fill out a form to say they've got this, that, the other GCSE. It doesn't actually make any difference. It doesn't, and some of these jobs are quite well paid jobs. They're not, it's not
button money.
Yeah. So I think the problem with the education at the moment, as an employer, is they're teaching everybody completely the wrong thing. And they're telling everybody to go to, it's another conversation. They're telling everybody to go to university, and there's no point. Let's go to university.
I've been saying this for years, that university is great for certain industries. If you want to be an accountant or a solicitor, or any of those kind of types of careers, then yes, going to university is the obvious way to go into that role. But if you want to be a a builder or a plasterer or an electrician, or you want to work in IT, you don't have to go to university to go and get that qualification.
I hear you there, though, but it's like in my profession, okay, so for me to be able to continue with my profession, my supervisor, so which is like my mentor, said to me, you need to go to university and finish this. You need to go to university and get that. Then you need to go and get accredited by this organisation that takes 300 quid off me each year, which absolutely give me nothing back. And I still do that because it's the right thing to do. But it comes back to it's the right thing to do. I agree with you completely, wholeheartedly. I would rather have somebody who is a bookkeeper who taught themselves about everything than I would have somebody who's got a piece of paper to sell me that they can do it.
Well, I've interviewed and I've employed people who have been to university with, the best software engineering degree that you can get. And then you put some code in front of them and they're like, I don't understand this. I don't know what's going on, because they have no experience. They understand it from a book. They can read a book and they can understand, how it should work. But actually, the practical side of doing it is they're just no good. They've got no experience. And I didn't go to university. I went to college for about 3 weeks and then dropped out. And everything that I've done is always by just doing it. It doesn't matter if I get it wrong. It's just a case of try it and see if you can do it. If you can't do it, there's so many resources online. We're really fortunate about that. That you can go and learn something.
Doesn't that come back to I think you and I have talked about this about, say, Will, for example. He was at the local high school. Music teacher told him he'd never get anywhere. That his kind of genre of music was crap. Basically, when he came to marking his GCSEs, he thought about kind of not pushing him through. He went to college, got straight A's. He went to college because he needed to go and do something else. And now most people know he's an international DJ, music producer. And, he does things that most of us would dream about being able to do at his age. He's all over the world. And it's like, it's that bit, isn't it? It's society expects you to be a certain way. Your school teacher expects you to follow that path. He's got lots of friends that have gone on to university to do music, never even got any further. They've just...
And I think the world...
They've never used it. Well, like you with your art, really, isn't it, to a certain...
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the world's changing as well, in the sense of, you have got schools and colleges that are pushing people to go to university. And I think a lot of that is, unfortunately, about money. If you go to... It's becoming a business. And I think that's really wrong. But I think perception is starting to change. So it's a bit sad really, but I love the law. I love reading law. I like helping people with legal stuff. And, traditionally you have to go to university to become a solicitor or a barrister. And the reality is that you can actually do a course, I think it's a year course, maybe it's 2-year course, which is kind of equivalent to an A-level. It's not really anything more than that, but you can become a qualified, certified, whatever the word is, solicitor by doing that. And the world's starting to change. And I know accountancy, you can do something similar now with accountancy, which is fantastic.
I've forgotten what it's called. There is a course you can do. Yeah, they're always advertising. I've forgotten. But I think it depends on what level you want to go in on. So
agreed.
With accountancy, if you want to be a bookkeeper or whatever, then get a job with a company and they'll put you through some courses and everything else should be great.
You learn on the job.
Yeah. If you want to run something, you would need to have gone to university. You'd need to have had all your qualifications. You would have needed to be in the industry and run businesses and departments and people before you could say become a financial director or something.
Yeah,
I think that's kind of...
But is that the university of life? Or is that the university that you've got to sit in a university?
For me, that's a bad example, because for me, I put that in with a doctor. A doctor has to go to university.
But I hear that, but that is a contradiction in terms, isn't it? Because
you've got to get the university is the start bit.
Yeah.
Then you've got to go and work somewhere to get...
We could have a disagreement
the knowledge.
About this. Why do you have to have the university bit? to be able to become the financial director?
You don't have to, in one way. So if you started in a business and came straight out of school and worked in the sales office, they said, "Can I work in the accounts office?" And they went, "Yeah, all right, you can do some invoicing." And then you did your online qualifications, or then you did night school, and you got the qualifications that way. Then fine. So you could do it that way, but for me, it's one thing that you have to have qualifications in, to have letters on your name to be able to do that job. Almost anything else, you don't. So why do you want to go to university to be a nurse? Why do you want to go to university to be a police officer?
But isn't it that's the same though, isn't it?
But you don't need a qualification to do that.
You have to go to university.
Experiences.
Yeah, I agree. But to be a nurse now, you have to go to university.
Which you shouldn't have to do.
In my opinion. But I also feel, I know, and in my opinion, I don't think you need to do that to become an accountant, because I think sometimes, and I suppose what we're basically talking about is different expectations and different points of view, but also it's the barriers that it creates. So that may create a barrier for somebody. We accept people who've got, say, a criminal record. We have to do a DBS on everybody. But we do a risk assessment if anybody has got a criminal record. And I've employed people that could decorate the whole of this room with their criminal record. But if I didn't give them the chance, like there's a guy that I worked with years and years ago, and he knows that if I hadn't given him that chance, he wouldn't be running a very big international company now. But I gave him that chance, because by him he could do what he did for me, he then could prove himself to other people. And I think that's the same thing. It's just barriers. Does the university create barriers, or does it open them up?
And most of the time, I think it creates barriers more than it doesn't. So most of the time, you'll actually see a CV and go, "They've gone to university." Because they're then going to immediately. I know I'm kind of tarring everyone with the same brush, but a lot of people. I've gone to university, I expect this, and my pay grade's this, and I'm better because I've got this qualification. And that's back to my biggest bugbear of no one's better than anybody else based on.
I do agree.
If you've got no qualifications, or you've got a honours degree in whatever, it doesn't make you better. I think because you're told the elite go to university, it's then pushed into you. I didn't go, so I'm sure somebody that goes to university will completely disagree with everything I'm saying.
Well, I went to university because I had to, not because I wanted to. If I had my way, I'd never have gone to university, ever. I hated every single moment of it. There's not a single part of university that I took any pleasure out of, at all. And I'm not friendly with anybody that I went to university with. It was the worst experience, and I wouldn't recommend it to anybody. And in fact, I never encouraged my children to go. I've only got one child that went to university, and he went for a year, left after a year, and then went back when he was in his late 20s, early 30s.
I think everyone's got their, for me, the whole COVID thing proved that university is the whole setup. I'm not saying the people that go there, it's not their fault.
No.
The setup is wrong, because everybody said, "Oh, I'm not getting my full experience. I'm not getting able to.
I can't go and get drunk.
I can't go and party and this, that, and the other." And then I saw on the news last night that Bristol was worrying because 90% of their trade in the week is because of university. And I'm like, if you're a university, you shouldn't have any money. You shouldn't be able to afford to go out and party, and you should be working and doing your work sat in your dorm or whatever it is every night. So if you're saying it's terrible and that whole economy is going to go bankrupt because you're not going out partying 5 nights a week, why are you going out 5 nights a week? Yeah. I go to work. By the time I get home, I haven't got enough energy to flip and go out.
That's because you're getting old.
I'm like, Well,
I'm aware of time. We've run, and we've probably got somebody else.
We are, yeah. Thank you so much for coming on.
That's all right.
I really enjoyed it.
We always ask our guests what sort of goal or plan they've got for the next 12 months, because we want to invite you back in a year's time and look at whether you've achieved your goal. So if you've got something in mind that you can share.
Just one thing.
One thing for my current expansion for the business to go according to plan.
All right.
We'll review that in a year's time.
That in a year's time.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely
That's quite all right.
brilliant. Thank you. Thank you.